So today we are out in my garage for a comparison video of sorts, comparing two different generations of Dayton slash leading edge 48-inch commercial ceiling fans. One side of the garage we have a Dayton model 4C853, aka the ring fan, which is a relabeled leading edge model HT248. As the model number suggests, the model name is the High-Tech 2. From the year 1988, manufactured by Weatherite, or China Cold Storage, DBA Weatherite. Manufactured in Hong Kong. The other side of the garage, we have a Dayton Model 4C853A, which is a relabeled leading edge model 4820-1, manufactured circa 2008, made in Thailand by Husan. And we're going to take a look at the exact similarities and differences between each fan. Starting with the similarities. Both are steel, stamped steel motor with steel blades. They're similarly substantial in their construction quality. Main difference being the canopies. Canopies on the Weatherite made unit they're steel, whereas on the Husan they are plastic. The Weatherite also has a much lower current draw. I believe it's 0.65 amps as compared to the Husan, which pulls, it's either 0.85 or 0.88, I can't remember. It's on the tag. Let me see if I can add it. Okay, yeah, that's 0.85. Which for a 48-inch fan, that's a pretty big current draw. Which also leads me to, it leads to one of the Husan's major problems. 0.85 is a lot of current for a fan of this size to draw. As you can see, the motor does not have any vent holes. There's nowhere for heat to escape. Since it's a stamped steel shell that holds in a lot of that heat, the heat over time can dry up and inevitably destroy the bearings, which are subpar to begin with. That leads the fan to lock up, and what you're left with is a dead fan. In other words, these fans have a very high failure rate of about 50%. Then again, the failure rate on the ring fans wasn't the greatest either. I'm going to use Toys R Us as an example, because of course that's where these fans were most commonly seen. My local Toys R Us had, I believe, 24 or 25 ring fans. Here I am calling them ring fans again. But they had 24 or 25 of these fans installed throughout. When I was a kid, I remember seeing every single one of them run. By the time I was probably... No. Now keep in mind, I've got a very good memory for these kind of things, so this is going back to when I was like a year, 2 years old. But around the time my parents started taking me to Toys R Us, I'm fairly sure I recall seeing every single one of these fans run. Or rather, the units that were in the Toys R Us store. One by one, the units over the registers, they were the first to go. Mainly because balloon strings would get caught in them. Little kids letting go of their balloons would fly up, get tangled up in the fan, and stop it from turning. So I'm sure that has something to do with the failure rate on these fans. I have to believe it does. Another thing I've noticed is that these, I'm going to say in the later days, they had a run of these with bad capacitors. Because I do remember seeing one around age 3 in the back of my local Toys R Us store. Okay, it ran at a normal speed. And then one day it was running really sluggish. And then the next time I was out there, it didn't run at all. Which again leads me to believe that they had a run of these fans with bad capacitors. And one by one, the fans failed, they got replaced. With about half of the store being replacement fans. However, the failure rate still appears to be higher on the Husan made Daytons. I want to use another Toys R Us store as an example that had these fans installed in it from the start. All but like 2 of the fans in the store ended up being replaced with EnviroFan Silverlines before they were even 10 years old. Whereas the Weatherites in my local Toys R Us probably lasted a good, I want to say 2 decades. 2 decades before they started. When was that store built? I don't even know when the store was built. I'm assuming it was built sometime in the 80s, so they probably lasted a good decade before the first one started going. Anyway, I think I've said enough that can be said about these fans, so we'll fire them up and see how they do performance-wise. Not going to run them through the speeds just because they respond so differently to this control. It's a dual fan control. Capacitor values, I believe, are 8 and 18. But since this one has such a high current draw, it also eats up a lot of the capacitance. And one thing you'll notice right away is that the Husan unit gets up to speed faster. Doesn't take as long to get up to speed, obviously because it's got a assumingly larger motor inside. Either that or it's overdriven at the capacitor. Another reason I think the failure rate may be so high on these is because they might be geared toward 50 cycles rather than 60. Running them at 60 cycles might make them produce more heat. Anyone who's a bit more well versed in electric than me can probably check that claim. So they run at about the same speed. One thing I noticed probably right away, that you get a bit more air off of the Husan. I mean, the ring fan isn't bad, but it's not great. This is basically an industrial fan with the edges of the blades rolled over to make it so that it can be installed on lower ceilings. Whereas this was designed specifically for commercial environments. Stores, classrooms, you name it. I'd say a more apt performance comparison would be a Husan made leading edge / Dayton to a cast Weatherite leading edge / Dayton. Since the only cast Weatherites that I have are 56-inch and 60-inch, it would be a bit of an unfair comparison. I would need to achieve or obtain a 56-inch Husan in order to compare a Husan with a cast Weatherite, or a 60-inch Husan in order to do that comparison. So that is all to this little video. Hope you enjoyed it.